So we'll be giving the floor next to two people who are going to be doing a double presentation. Both of them are named Laura. We have Laura Fernández Cordero, and we're going to be talking about decision-making by persons with functional diversity. Laura has a master's degree in fundamental rights and is a member of the Forum for Independent Life, which she joined in 2005. And she's worked in the Down Syndrome Foundation here in Spain, and has also worked for CIRCO since March of this year.
And then we have Laura Aínsa Castañer, who is going to give me support, and I'll reach my own decisions, and she participates in different community projects with regards to art and dancing. She's part of the dancing company, and she's an artist in the Diverse Circle group. This company works in cooperation with Alter Valencia group.
I'm going to also go quickly through my slides, since this morning I made everybody stick to their timetable, and I'm going to have to follow my own example. I am going to talk about something that's very clear. My object in this presentation is I speak for no more than 20 minutes. I obviously want everybody to understand me. I want the person sitting here at my right to understand me particularly. So I have tried to make a highly visual presentation that's very clear, and I want to make sure that it should be easy to be followed. So I understand that Laura isn't going to find it easy at all times, and I'm going to ask her to tell me what was the easiest and what was the hardest for her to follow. I want her to tell me what she hasn't been able to follow. And I think for Laura it's hard to follow everything that's been said during this day today, because sometimes we talk about being inclusive and things like that, but people who have functional intellectual diversity then can't always follow us. So I want you to understand that I'm going to be brief and I'm going to be clear. So my final objective is to speak very clearly. I'm not going to give an exhaustive speech, but I think what's really important, and I think that what Laura is going to say after my own intervention is going to be much more interesting than what I have to say. I'm going to address three issues. Why do people with functional intellectual diversity or intellectual functional diversity not have a right to personal assistance? Now, what does the UN Convention say about that? The right to independent life and the right to make your own decisions. And what kinds of things in the field of personal assistance would be of use to a person with intellectual functional diversity? Now, this would take forever for us to answer all of these questions. So I'm sure there are issues that I'm not going to be able to address, and I'd like to apologize for that initially before I even begin. And we'll be here together, and we can, for this afternoon and tomorrow, we can talk about these things in greater depth. Let's talk about a current situation. At the end of 2015, we're talking about 3,000 people with intellectual functional diversity who had been recognized. And so we're talking about people with a disability of 33%. We're talking about these people who are represented there in this pie. There are a few more men than women. And so there are lots of people there who are really being left behind. So if we do an age breakdown, then we see that between 18 and 65 years of age, we see most of the people. We're talking about 122,000 people between 35 and 64. And some of my slides have the easy reading symbol, and others don't. When we're talking about intellectual functional diversity, then we try to make things simple to understand, because these people have the same rights as everybody else to understand these concepts. And we also say that personal assistants are not caregivers, they're not monitors, they are there to provide personal assistance, although we're more used to the other figures. These we have to stress that these are people who are working, the personal assistants are working for, let me stress, for the person with intellectual diversity. And the person with the intellectual diversity, functional diversity, is the boss in this situation. Nevertheless, the truth of the matter is that people with intellectual diversity know nothing about personal assistance. No one's ever spoken to them about them. Now, when these people are evaluated, when it comes to providing assistance to independent living, nobody explains what a personal assistant would do. And now this has only been recognized in Spain with the passing of the law on dependence, but there's no specification in that law of what a personal assistant is. Some of the autonomous regions of Spain had tried to regulate that figure, and we find ourselves in this situation. In some cases, legislation simply passes by the figure of the personal assistant, while in some communities this figure is recognized. Let me give you examples to illustrate what I'm talking about. I'm from Vizcaya, Bilbao, and the law where I come from specifies all of the requirements, saying that a person with intellectual functional diversity then has the right to decide what services they want to receive. That's it. There's no more information. Now, if a person is considered not to have this capacity, and people with intellectual diversity haven't been considered in a situation to make those decisions, then so it's been perceived that they would not be able to direct the work of their personal assistant. And so each of these, of the different provinces in the Basque Country have their own interpretation. Now, there are, in Álava, for example, there people with intellectual functional diversity can actually do enjoy the right to a personal assistant. Now, in here in Valencia, for example, it says that the representative of the person with intellectual diversity, or that person herself, will be able to determine what services are pertinent. So we see two different examples of what we find in this country today. In both cases, nobody is actually complying with the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability. So I was very interested to hear from the representative of the regional government of Spain, when they're saying they're going to listen to us, and I understand that she's going to listen to what I'm saying, and I want to say that whatever they're doing, it's not enough. Let's go back to our index, and let's go back to the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability. Now, this is taken from the version of easy reading, the simplified reading, and it's easy to read. I think that people with intellectual functional diversity, and I think for people without functional diversity, would probably benefit from reading the simplified version. But I think the convention speaks of 5 rights which are that nobody's complying with. I don't want to go into details of Article 5. When we talk about equality and no discrimination, I think nobody is complying with Article 5 of the CRPD. And I think people who actually have functional diversity are not going to be receiving services to palliate that functional diversity. Now, it's true, we can also talk about the right to information, which is linked to Article 9. I haven't included this concept here, but I do want to speak about Article 9 because I think it's extremely important. But let's go to Article 19 first, and where it says that people with a functional or with disability, as the convention says, have the right to an independent life, and the convention guarantees that they can live the people they want to live with, they can decide where they want to live, that they don't have to leave their communities, and that they will enjoy the same services and installations as everyone else. We think that in this case it's important, when this convention is ratified, to include some observations, and this is, and we've already spoken about observation number 5, where it says clearly that the control of the personal assistant can be done as in the format of help for decision taken. And this is very important now, because this is really what when people are denied their rights, that's what people are alluding to. Here we're talking about the privation of any degree of legal capacity cannot be appealed to deny the right. So you can't go to any decision that incapacitates a person to deny them the access to a personal assistant. So now here in Spain we're going to be changing the whole system whereby you can have somebody incapacitated. But I think we've gone literally crazy. What for the last 20 years we were told that we had to incapacitate these people to protect people, and now we're using that incapacitation to deny people the right to specific right to the access to specific rights. So no, if you're going to make decisions, then you need to have the necessary tools to do that. Now, that's why, let me insist that it's important for Laura to understand me. I need to convey this information to her if she's going to make a decision. And so if we don't know what our options are, obviously our capacity to make a decision is limited. And otherwise, and apart from that, it should be other people who should make decisions for me. So being able to make decisions is something that's fundamental if people with intellectual diversity are to live successfully in our communities. When we speak of accessibility, we say that the countries that ratify the convention can guarantee that there will be adequate housing, schools, buildings, hospitals, etc. And we're talking, and here we can speak about cognitive accessibility. How can we guarantee that people will all be participating under equal conditions? And I've brought a couple of links so that you can see what is happening here in Spain to improve cognitive accessibility. It's true that in Extremadura, then in an office for accessibility has been created, and there are many other examples throughout the country. In 2017 in Extremadura, they organized the first workshop on cognitive accessibility. And during that workshop, we discussed of the things that were of particularly importance to provide these guarantees. And we all reached the conclusion that what's being provided now is not enough. Oh dear, I've lost my place, said the speaker. I've really lost my place. So what I wanted to say at this point is that when we talk about cognitive accessibility, we've got some examples of what's being done with easy reading, simplified reading. A sentence has been handed down, and we've seen that in a specific recent court case, then the judge actually wrote the sentence in this format. So this is really important. It's important to have lists of books available. For example, Don Quixote can be put in an easy-to-understand format. and I think we're talking about Convention of Rights, then it's very important for people to be able to read it and understand it. Now, Article 12, in my opinion, is key because it says that people with a disability should have the right to own and to inherit property and things like that. And the question of incapacitating somebody then is the first step to other decisions that are being made. And what's extremely important here in Article 12 is that people have to participate in decisions that are going to ultimately affect them. That's why, to finish, if we go to my third area, I'm going to repeat some of the things that we've already said, but we're going to be talking about ethics, and I think it's important to say these things again. When we talk about adjustments and changes in terms of the personal assistance, when we talk about managing this figure, we've reached a point that the first thing we have to change is legislation to eliminate all discrimination that can be brought about through legislation. And I think tomorrow we're going to actually be talking about some proposed changes. And when we talk about personal assistance, we mean everybody should have access to this figure, and we have to completely change the system whereby people can be incapacitated. We're going to have to make all of these elements accessible so that people who are going to be living independently can understand all these documents, and because information needs to be accessible. And all of these things need to be easy to understand, as I said. And if we haven't developed these documents yet, then we have to start doing that. The person who's going to be reserving services has to participate in the process of deciding who provides the service, when that person provides the service, how they provide the service. And then we have to have another supervisor to make sure that good practices are being upheld. And of course, people providing services have to be duly trained. And I'm not talking about hiring psychologists and psychiatrists and psychologists and sociologists to provide these services. I'm talking about the right kind of training to be effective. And we need to provide support to decision making for people with different functional diversities. And this aspect needs to be regulated, and people who are providing these services need to have special training in cognitive accessibility. Here, let me stop for a minute. For many years, I have worked in an organization, but I represent myself. I know I know how difficult it is to support people making decisions. And we're talking about systems where we have lots of saviors out there, and I'm really worried about the saviors. And we need to understand the methodology that needs to be deployed in the decision-making process before we jump in. Again, the profile of the personal assistant is something I'm going to leave for Laura to discuss with us. Of course, this figure needs to be committed to the principles behind independent living, and something that's absolutely crucial. That person has to listen to the user to find out what they really want to do. I've heard so many times people saying, "No, my child isn't going to be doing that for other people." No, when we talk about what you're going to do when you're older, no, let's not talk about that. No. Right, we've all gotten white hair. Now, why are we waiting to get older? I know, of course, these people need to be able to relate to family members and to decision makers. These people need to be taught to do, well, sometimes these people are taught to do things that are not useful to them. We have to be very flexible. We can talk about personal assistance for small children, for example. And so So, of course, the personal assistant has to help people in health issues and their daily lives, etc. But they particularly have to help people with intellectual, functional diversity in the decision-making process. As I say, information has to be comprehensible. Decisions can't be made on behalf of these people. Let me stress once again, there has to be some kind of outside follow-up and supervision to make sure that everyone is acting ethically. And we have to change the system whereby people are incapacitated. This is crucial. We could talk about the different types of regulation or ad infinitum today, but I think we need to really redo our whole system. And we have to make sure that we had to develop new indicators for independent living. We need to develop new ones. We need to validate them. We need to test them. And what we need to do is to shift the balance to make sure that the ultimate decisions that are affecting people are made by the people themselves. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to give the floor to Laura, who is going to flesh out our session.
Good afternoon. Let me introduce myself. My name is Laura Aínsa Castañer, and I'm 25 years old. I live in Valencia, where I was born. I have an intellectual functional diversity. Well, actually, I like to swim. I like to do theater, dance, and go out with my friends. People say I'm a dreamer, I'm a happy person, nice, and I'm a fighter. I don't think that my functional diversity should bother me. When I was born, there was a problem during the delivery, and I had an oxygen shortage. I had epilepsy attacks, and that made me feel different. I had eating, walking, speaking problems. I remember that I liked to do different activities. I liked to skate, swim, dance, and I had classes with a physiotherapist, and I loved to go to the theater, and I did speech therapy and a lot of things I don't even remember. I'm going to tell you about my studies. When I went to the Jaume Primer school, I had, there was a curricular adaptation. I do remember that I did have some problems. I felt alone. I didn't have many friends, and some of the older boys made fun of me, and they laughed at me. I don't remember very well what happened. I don't even know how to remember that, but it wasn't good because there was a big problem there. Some boys hit me, but other ones hit me. The fact that it was a hard time, and that's how things went by at the institute with the rest of my colleagues. I was afraid to go to a school because I didn't know anyone, and there were so many. It was so big and so many boys and girls. Amparo Artigas was my tutor, and she took care of me lovingly, and when I felt alone, she took care of me. I've even seen her again. She was my tutor, and I've even seen her after my studies, and she's always very happy to see me, and I'm also very happy, and we're very fond of each other. The fact is that thanks to her, I was happy at the institute and high school. I don't know, if it hadn't been for her, I don't know what would have happened. From high school, I went to a different area where I could study different types of things. And now I go to the Alter Center. And what am I doing right now? I'm participating in 2 associations, Alter Valencia, and now I do different activities. Summer courses in the Easter and workshops. And in Alter, there's a case to be able to work. And last year, I did a practice in an association. I decided that the work of my life was to be a subaltern. I'd love to do photocopies and work with papers. And I remember that I told my parents that I liked working with papers. And so 4 years ago, I worked in the Alter workshop. And in the beginning, I was a bit afraid. And then in the end, since I didn't like the performance, I tried it anyway. It was a great experience. And with this circus, we've traveled to Galicia, Naples, and to Portugal. And we've had different performances at school, in the streets, in the village areas. And everything was very interesting. And I have to say that I'm surrounded by good friends and they are happy the way I am. And so they know how to keep secrets, and they're like my family. What is my future like? I have a lot of dreams that have not been fulfilled, and I am preparing work to be a subaltern. And this was my dream, to be able to work at administration as an auxiliary, because it would be a good job. I would be able to earn money, and I'd be able to fulfill my dreams. I'd be able to go and live with my boyfriend in a house near my parents, because I'd like to have children, and I'd like to have 2 children, because that's what everyone likes, and I would like to be able to do that too. I like to do what everyone else can do. I know that I'm always going to need help for many, many things. Sometimes I'm afraid, and people have to help me feel fine. I don't cook well, and I'm afraid of the fire, but I think that little by little I'll be able to learn how to do more things, even though someone will have to help me to do these things. With work, I want to work, but someone is going to have to guide me and tell me how to do things. I don't worry about that, because I like to learn. And a personal assistant to prepare this intervention. I was thinking about how it would be to have a personal assistant and timetables, and I met monitors from the associations, groups I work with, and a personal assistant is someone who could help me in my daily life with my housework, and I could go out and buy things and organize my trips. Person could go to doctors with me, do proceedings, renew my identity card, and the like, and to help me go on the subway and on the bus, because some people are in wheelchairs, but sometimes it's hard for a person like me to move about the city. But I have an intellectual functional diversity. We can move about physically, but sometimes things make us afraid. And for example, because do you know how hard it is when you are at a bus stop and there's been a detour, and then it's not easy for me to find the other bus stop. I think that I need to have a phone so that people can tell me how to resolve these problems. Do you know how hard it is to understand doctors? Sometimes they ask me things which I don't understand, and I don't know how to answer them. So there's a payment card, because I'm not sure to know if I paid correctly, if I'm going to be deceived. I'm afraid that something might happen that I don't understand. I don't know how to resolve this. This is why I always need to have somebody with me. And now I think, now that I'm getting older, I would like to be able to do more things, and to I see that there would be more challenges. And if I had a personal assistant, then I'm sure that that assistant would help me a great deal. A personal assistant that would be a trustworthy person, and that person would be able to understand me, because we have a different way of thinking compared to other people. Sometimes we're afraid of things that seem to be ridiculous for other people, and sometimes we're not worried about things that other people worry about. So that assistant should have a certain type of empathy. And the personal assistant that I should like would be better to have a girl. And she could be nice, loving, and even though she would help me in my life, she wouldn't tell me what I would have to do. I would tell her what I want, and she wouldn't judge me. I need to have a freedom, and I like to do what I like to do. For example, if I want to make love with somebody, I don't want someone to say, hey, this is good or bad. I want someone to help me in my relationships. I don't want anyone to forbid me from doing things. I want people to let me make my own decisions, and I will need support. And in the housework, for example, cleaning the house, cooking, paying receipts, paying for my electricity, and the like. All of this is very difficult for me to understand. I will need someone that will understand this better than I, and will know how to apply this. And if we need to have a medical examination or even go to the doctor, it's hard to understand them, and it's hard for them to understand me. So to buying shoes and socks, and to know how much money I can spend if something is too expensive, how big my budget is for this and that, to manage my vacations, my leisure time, to buy tickets for the theater. I don't know how to do that. I'm afraid to do those things, to organize things so that I would wake up in time to go to work or something. All the administrative proceedings or something that I don't know what to do, pay my tax, get a passport, social security card. When I don't know how to do, any of these procedures like going here and there in different proceedings, and I don't even know how to go on the subway by myself. And timetables for a personal assistant, it's hard to speak about all the things that I would need from an assistant. Wake up in the morning with the meals. Obviously, I can do things alone. To buy, I would need to do that twice a week. I need to buy clothes once a month. My personal hygiene, and take me to the hairdresser and to go to the doctor for my exams, or paperwork, for example, in case any problem might arise, by knowing that that person might not be available, but I could find someone else. And so sometimes we need one thing here. I need to be able to live in my own city and to work and to live with my my significant other. And I want to live. I don't like the idea of going to live in a residence. I like to live in my town. This is why I have decided to say that we need support, and I want to make my own decision. And now I would like to finish with a video of my life so that you will understand what my life is all about, by thanking everyone for having allowed me to participate in this conference.
I found a love. Beautiful and sweet. Well, I never knew you were the someone waiting for me. 'Cause we were just kids when we fell in love, not knowing what it was. I will not give you up this time, but darling, just kiss me slow. Your heart is all I own, and in your eyes you're holding mine. Baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms, barefoot on the grass. We're listening to our favorite song. When you said you looked a mess, I whispered underneath my breath, but you heard it. Darling, you look perfect tonight. Well, I found a woman stronger than anyone I know. She shares my dreams. I hope that someday I'll share her home. I found a love to carry more than just my secrets, to carry love, to carry children of our own. We are still kids, but we're so in love, fighting against all odds. I know we'll be alright this time. Darling, just hold my hand, be my girl, be your man. I found a love.
Gracias.